Live streaming is on.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Dan Gay, Chief Marketing Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain. I'm joined here with Mr. Tim Vasco, who's our CEO, Chief Architect, and Founder of BlockCerts Blockchain. Good morning to you, Tim.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing awesome, thank you. It's great to be
Always
with
good
you
to be
again.
here on a Friday, right?
Absolutely, it is. So thanks, everyone, for joining us here. We're actually going to talk about something. I think this is really a history in making day. We're putting a stake in the ground. We're talking about something that's never been done before in any market. And, stay tuned because you're going to want to hear about how we're tying trading value and utility value and everything into one beautiful, nice package, and something that, I wish that was done early on in many other
we've
markets.
got a lot of reasons to wish it now that we've done the analysis, right, Dan?
Exactly. Now
I was telling my wife, I'm like, I remember 1981 when the first Apple came out. So it's all about value.
Value's everything. And, the crypto market, we know what the crypto market's done. And is there value in the crypto market? Well, there's certainly a lot of money that is in there, but creating real value, that's really the key to unlocking something that's brand new in this marketplace, and pretty exciting to see.
Exactly. You know what, Dan? We got our first thumbs down arrow.
We've been doing this for over a year, and out of all
almost two now, coming up on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was you.
It probably was. I was having an off day, I guess.
Yeah, it must have been you.
Yeah, so if you like what you hear or don't, please subscribe. And I guess everybody.
Yeah, if you don't, tell us what you don't like.
Exactly, that's good. But give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that more. But
and we're gonna be answering questions next week. There's a lot to cover here today, so let's just dive into it. But
let's do it.
Next week, we'll be answering a bunch of questions. So here we go. If I can get this thing to work. All right. Got it. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is value. And it was an exciting week last week, Dan, everybody, because we actually entered the DeFi zone. We put 50 million tokens up on Uniswap. We're expanding that out. We're in pre-launch of what this bridge to value is. And after doing that, I realized there needs to be a lot of explanation on really what is crypto speculation,
right,
and what is actual utility value. So when I was trying to think about that, having conversations after putting our tokens up. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh,
breaking news.
Yeah, what happened this week?
Value. Who controls the value? What happened this week? We couldn't go on without talking that. The whole idea of this Facebook breaking down, going down, and the whistleblower stuff all coming up really brings a point to utility. And although this might seem out of nowhere, like this isn't not even related, it's actually completely related. And I'm going to show you a new way to look at the economics of business. This big debate's been going on since 2016, 17, 18, whenever Analytica broke. What choices are being made with your data? Hey, wait a minute, still going on here? Oh, well, really? No, not really. It's not. And if you look at what Facebook was doing, just go read some patents that they have about reverse profiling and so forth. I was reading those patents maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago, looking at what they were doing about when we wrote our patent. And it's really true. It's like it basically boils down to who's in control and what's going on in the long term. So today we're going to talk about playing that long game versus the short game. And this professor from Columbia University, Mark Brody, says this about golf. And I'm going to relate this. So for all you golfers out there, I'm not a golfer. I grew up on a golf course. I don't do it anymore, but I would like to make this relationship. between what is actually happening in the market and what is actually happening with technology today. So it's the cloud crypto emergence of merging these things together. The long game explains 2/3 of the difference in scores between two typical amateur golfers. Replace that with amateur anything, business builders, investors, whatever, and the short game, and explain the remaining 1/3. Explain the remaining 1/3. Okay, so 2/3. The stat is in the game that kind of came up with long game, short game terminology. 1/3 is the short game. 2/3 is long. So let's see if we can prove that.
Right.
Let's see if we can prove that in economics in general. All right. So the short game, what is the short game? It's trying to guess where things are going in the market. It's trying to play all the influence-onomics. It's trying to play what the speculation is, all that kind of stuff. So that's the short game. And it's taxing, and frankly, it accounts for about 1/3 of the success if you can get there. But most people don't.
And Tim, that's really the herd mentality too.
It is the herd mentality.
Yep.
And it is that idea that, oh my God, I'm going to get rich quick. And I found this article, which was just written in May. And it's like Jake lost millions of pounds trading cryptocurrencies. He does not want his identity known because he's still in treatment at one of the only hospitals in the UK that treats people who are obsessed with gambling on the value of virtual currency. And then this one I love because Willy Woo, whoever that is, thank you for the chart. It's 10th of October, 2016, the shitcoin pattern. And we've talked about this, but I just wanted to make it really visual today about pump and dump.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what that actually looks like. Trying to catch that, play that short game all the time is absolutely brutal. And when we talk about brutal, I showed last week that we put our 50 million up. And then earlier this week, we had another call internally. And I was explaining how I showed how trading $300 could cost as high as $3,400 in fees. So think about it. Like, here's this thing out there called Ethereum, and it's doing all these things, and it's great technology. I mean, it's got a really good purpose. It's blockchain. And then you get this gas fees surge to all-time high. It reminds me of like the 1970s with oil cartels, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you remember that, Dan, driving into the lineups, waiting for gas, wondering if they're just going to shut the pump before you can even get your car moving again.
Yeah, and that's when cars were really important to us because that was our life.
There was no Uber, right?
Yeah, right.
And even if there was Uber, it wouldn't have worked, right? You couldn't get gas. And then you just go along the internet and you say, well, why did I pay gas fees for a failed transaction? $200 in gas fees, failed, I lost. I'm like, I love this one. Does someone want to explain this to me? How can I lose everything and gain nothing? It cost me effing, I won't say it, $200 in gas fees, and I literally got nothing.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this one's a great one too. This was just six hours, a day ago or something. Hi, I would greatly appreciate if someone could help me out. I tried buying an NFT on OpenSea using my Coinbase wallet. The gas fees were too much, so I tried buying as much as I could afford to, and if you read more, transactions still pending. Guess what? It failed. You adjusted your gas feed, it failed. So whoever wrote this, you're gone. It's done. You're out of gas.
Right.
Go back to the drawing board. When we designed utility with BlockCerts and the blockchain, into the blockchain, when I started working on this way back in 2014, 2015, and then ultimately brought it all together in 2016, in Boston, I was at MIT. I'm thinking about some of this. I'm doing the fintech stuff at MIT. And I'm like, that'll never work. That's not the way the real world works. The real world, like in the real world, can you imagine going to a meeting? Hey, I got to be there in 5 minutes.
Right.
Right. It's just not gonna work. It ain't gonna get you there. So I wasn't the one to come up with this. If you're a student of economics at all, and you know who John Maynard Keynes is, he says markets can remain irrational a lot longer than you can remain solvent. In other words, you're going to get burned. It's irrational. This is not a rational way for things to work. It's not rational to say, I want to do a smart contract. Oops, there needs to be a change. Start over. And that was,
by the way, you just lost your tokens.
Yeah, you lost your gas, you lost your fees. Thanks. Right. Let's start over. Let's walk through that door again. So if we want to wonder why blockchain has struggled with functionality, a lot of it is this, like all this short-term irrationality and the inefficiency, the economic inefficiency of the utility based on a market where miners and mining fluctuates the cost of doing a transaction. Think about that. That's exactly what kills economics in countries when we hear about hyperinflation and stuff like that, where their their currency doesn't have any value because the next morning when you wake up, it's worth 50% less or 70% less, right? And that was very common a couple decades ago in the South American countries and many of the underdeveloped countries. This economic phenomenon of inefficiency and irrationality has been around for a very long time. And so is this idea of short-term thinking, a very long time. Okay. So then we enter into the next phase of this is what's the long game. So we all think about like this crypto market and stuff that has been going on. And Dan, we've talked about Bitcoin and, oh my God, 50-cent Bitcoins. I remember that. That wasn't absolutely that long ago. In 08, 09, when the market crashed, it was really, struggling after the Great Recession. Right. Bitcoin came out and everybody's like, what's that? Like, what's that about? Right.
Right. Well, I remember I bought it a little over 800 and sold it at 1,500 and thought that was a short-term mentality, right?
You killed it. Exactly.
I thought I killed it. And now, you kick yourself.
How many of those 1,500 Bitcoin would you take back for the 55,000 it hit this week?
Yeah, I'd just take a few of them even.
Right? Exactly. So the long game, and I have not read this book, but I just love the title, and I'm sure it's good. It's How to Be a Long-Term Thinker in a Short-Term World. Yeah. And really that title says it all to me. So what's the value of being a long-term thinker? What's the value of this idea of getting utility into this new technology, this Web 3.0 technology? This is all Web 3.0. And how do you find that nugget that is going to give you that long game gain? We still have, I'm going to show you that golf analogy. I'm going to show you for real in the last week how that golf analogy works in finding utility value in long term. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just drive for show, putt for dough, as Bob, who's listening.
So let's do this. Let's look at Apple. Long game equal utility plus enterprise value. All right. So first of all, 1976, this was the Apple logo. And you can look at the logos and just look at evolution there, right? You can also look at the product line and look at evolution. That is utility right there, right? These all worked at the point in time. They worked at their level of what they did. The first Apple computer, the next Apple computer when they went public, the Mac, the first Mac, the iPod, the first iPhone, 2007, 2001, and finally the iPhone 13. All right. Now, utility cost 666.66, and I'm not going to mention why that's an interesting number beyond the fact that Wozniak loved repeating numbers, or maybe it was the devil's in the details. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if he was satanic or not, but he did like repeating numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when they went public, it was $1,298 in 1991. At that point, the stock was about 11 cents. Right? So if the utility value had been combined with the enterprise value, utility plus enterprise value, it wasn't. In other words, you had to make a choice. Am I going to get that and do this thing that I need to do on this computer? Or maybe I think that's a good bet. I'm going to go into the stock market. We never really had a market that combined utility plus enterprise value. Had we made that choice, the portfolio today would be worth $191,990 for my $1,298. There you go. Makes your Bitcoin seem even more painful, doesn't it?
It does, especially with so many people that probably have one of those in their basement or attic or something.
Well, I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to talk about
because
that you might have in your basement. Okay.
Yeah, there's a market for it.
Then the price went up to $2,495 in this 20-year period, and you can see it's blank in here. Apple just about went bankrupt, and actually Microsoft came in with about $250 million to bail them out during their antitrust lawsuit because they had to save the company. In 2001. Jobs also got fired and was brought back. Scully ran him into the ground. Guy from Coke or Pepsi came in as the CEO, and then they got rid of him, brought Jobs back. Jobs came up with the iPod. 2001. Look at this price, $399 to buy that iPod. Now look at this one. This one, if you'd have bought the shares at that price or utility plus enterprise value, you'd have made $9 million. I probably do have one of those hanging around somewhere.
Yeah, I've got a drawer with a couple of those.
Right. So there you go. Each one of those, for those of you who got both of those, the enterprise value and this has $9 million sitting in your drawer, right?
Right.
Not so much. All right. Store of value is not here, but enterprise value is in how successful these versions are. All right. One last example, 2007, first iPhone came out. These show the share splits, so you can actually do this calculation if you want to go through the math I did. And that $499 would have been worth $1,067,000. So not bad, really, anywhere along the curve here.
Right.
And game changing for that long game, right?
Right.
So let's look at what happens with that one in the basement. And this rare Apple I computer could be yours for just $1.5 million. So that is selling the utility. So that utility is worth $1.5 million, maybe because it's rare, it didn't get junked, it's not thrown away. This guy must be a hoarder, I don't know. And this enterprise value, that same enterprise value I just showed you, was $190 million. And so that's why Yoda, little baby Yoda here, says, if only known I had. Exactly. Right?
So the point, Tim, just so everybody knows, the point is, wouldn't you like to have both?
Exactly. Exactly. Correct. So how do we get to this idea of the utility enterprise value curve? And so I took and built a little model for everybody to understand that. And this is a new curve, which is this idea of utility and enterprise value. Now, so we call IoT the Internet of Tokens. And by combining that token utility, the BCERT token utility, the enterprise, with the value of this emerging technology market, token blockchain-based market, the value of future iterations are preserved as the utility of the platform increases. What that means in common language is the more you use it and the more versions you see, the more versions you get, boom, 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 the higher the control of the utility curve provides the underlying core value. And this is how every tech company has become so powerful and so valuable right here.
And
okay.
Tim, just to point out a subliminal thing, and if you're watching Mitchell, right there in the first line where it says buy, that's not a mistake. B-U-Y.
Yeah.
That, obviously BY is the correct thing, but
right.
A little subliminal. Buy BCERT token.
So when we do this, if you buy the utility, and that first computer, for example, utility decreases as value increases. And typically the cost of the firm, it looks something like this. You're going to generally every tech firm, if you ever analyze it, really goes into the negative burn rate way before it gets up here, way before. There's just this capital burn rate of building out that technology. Now, if you happen to hit it right there and you start seeing that momentum increase, then as the next level or version, we call them versions in tech, of utility comes up, you now have an increasing value. And as user base goes up and utility continues to increase, it continues to version, utility will always drop off due to innovation. It will always go toward zero because the next version is going to have new features, new value, and things like that. This curve is exactly what, say, the banking system's struggling with right now, right? They have this high value, but their utility that they're at of their legacy systems is going through the floor, right? So as fintech comes out, there's a perfect example. As financial technology has come out, it's getting these high valuations and high growth as compared to legacy systems of the bank. So we always talk about that terminology disruption. This is what disruption means. When somebody can ride that curve and build a new curve on top of this, and you can take this forever. These curves can go like this as well. They can also jet up if something gets adopted really fast. Then you will have this idea of the technology utility value curve. And it's inversely related to the value of the enterprise that created it. So this utility drops, the inverse is the value of the firm goes up. Okay? Never before has any organization combined that value curve into the product, into the utility, right? Until now. That's what we did when we built these BCERT tokens. When we built 2 tokens, actually 3, we built the value token. Last week, the utility token. Last week, we combined that through the bridge with the value token. And by combining the BCERT tokens inside with the utility, with the enterprise value of the cloud, you now have an increasing value curve, right? That's the long game.
Yeah.
Right.
And the relationship. Yeah.
And the relationship between those. Correct. The value of the underlying technology in the evolving blockchain market is the value of future iterations that are preserved in the token as that value expands or it increases, right? And the control, we go back to that Facebook idea, who controls that value? Who actually is in control of that value? Centralized technology companies have typically been in control of that value curve right there.
Right.
Okay. So you're renting all of this utility while the ownership of that value is out here. And that's how the technology industry and many other industries actually have evolved. So when we look at it, our 50 million token experiment we put out there. We said, well, what's it look like? If all we were looking at is that short-term curve, we had a pretty good week. Ethereum was up 26.79% over that time. The BCERT ETH token on our 50 million went from 50 million to 63 million. Not a bad little return. If you liquidate that, that would have been a great thing. This could have easily gone the other way. It didn't. And so you had this. Remember, we talked about, I'm going to go all the way back there now. We talked about the long game versus the short game. And it said the typical, the long game explains 2/3 of the difference in scores. Let's look if we can play that out. We come down here and we look at this. The cumulative of the short game, 5 days, is 26.79. In that same period, if you would take what our base is inside our utility token, the value of our utility token, and run that same curve against it, it's 107.33%. So it's almost 4 times, 2/3, 3, 4 times what this is when you look at short-term versus long-term.
Right.
When you, the problem with a market that is a single focus market like this crypto market right now is it's all based on speculation. It's all one-sided. It's all over here. And the tokens that go out there don't do anything. They don't actually function. They're just trading tokens against tokens. Okay. So essentially, that gives us this model of the utility value curve in what we're experiencing when we look just at or listen just to the DeFi or token trading market. We start watching trading values. We start watching all that kind of stuff.
Right. And it wasn't like we were high-fiving this week because our focus is long game, short game. Without either, you have no game. So
exactly, that's right.
Okay. And we even saw this week, Tim, something we talked about yesterday, that when Facebook went down, they had a terrible day on Monday with like 4 different things. What Telegram did.
Yeah, so Telegram picked up what, 70 million users.
70 million users. So that just
utility.
goes to show.
Utility. And Telegram was quite interesting. Years ago, this is an interesting case study as well. Telegram several years ago did a token offering and brought in something like $1.7 billion, Dan.
Right.
But what they failed to do was create the tie of their utility of their product. They still don't have it to that token. So really, they were selling speculation without tying it back to functionality. Right. Conversely, a company called Brave built a browser, and they always tied their token to the functionality of the browser. Today, if you use the Brave browser, you actually get rewarded in tokens. Utility tied to value. Brave was really, I would say, the first guys to actually do that. And when they released their token, their 30 million tokens sold out about 30 seconds.
Right.
So that's a really interesting case study of tying utility to value and making sure that when that's fully enabled, that value, these different apps, we have all these D apps now that are driven by this token. What is a token? Let's just get into that real quick, because I think it's really important to explain to people what a token actually is. A token is actually software, right? Now, if it's just a speculation piece of software like Bitcoin or Ethereum at this point, then it is actually just going to do one thing, which is bounce up and down, right?
Right.
When it's a courier of software, and if you actually own that value as a business or as a user, you own these things that we talk about all the time: your privacy, your identity, your functionality. Then what happens is you end up with this model, this token model that embeds value for you as being in control. And that's what the users do. Okay. That's what the the C-suite does in corporate technology companies.
Correct. Yeah. And so, the question is, would you rather rent versus own? And this is the opportunity to actually stop renting and owning and having a part of something, which is being a part of a value community with rewards.
That's right. Okay, so let's go into what all this means. So there's tons of ways you can go out and you can handle all of that trading stuff and so forth and get out there. We showed you a bit about what that value looks like, but let's wrap this up by talking about what that this isn't new. Okay, Thomas Mann, born in 1875, he died in 1955, said this: "I don't think anyone is thinking long term now." So this idea of short-term thinking versus long-term thinking has been observed by economists and writers and philosophers for a very long time. This isn't anything new. What's new is this ability to combine the idea of what's shaping our world from here, this functionality of going digital in all aspects of our life, tying our business lives to our personal lives. Do I have a vaccine? Don't I? Can I travel? Can't I? Those kinds of things. And tying that to the economics that are about to change, that have changed our world, right? That's the whole point here. And thinking longer term, like what we didn't know what it was going to look like. We still probably don't know what it's going to look like coming out of the pandemic. We sure didn't know what it was going to look like when we started The World From Here 2 years ago.
No.
Going into the pandemic, that's why we called it The World From Here.
Yeah, because we had no idea. Well, you never have an idea, right?
You never have an idea. So
you have a vision.
You really have to ride those curves and understand that there's a shift. And there's a guy who did that. This guy did that. And I love this quote. Say what you will about Amazon, it succeeded, it worked. And this is a great quote. It's, if we think long term, we can accomplish things that we couldn't otherwise accomplish. So with what bringing blockchain into the world is, in our next World From Here, it won't be next week. We're going to answer questions, get more into this subject next week in our short form. And the following week, I'm going to talk about why every company on the planet now is a tech company. Every company is a tech company. And why every person and every company is a bank, and open banking will be another webinar to explain those concepts about what that does for value. Because the biggest thing that's happening right now, and you can go all over YouTube, you can go all over to all these sites, you can trade crypto, you can do all that kind of stuff. But the caution I have is be careful, be aware that this idea of short-term value or short-term thinking is what drives that market. It's speculation. And we're not here to educate. There's tons of really smart guys out there, great YouTubes you can watch and so forth about that speculation market. It makes sense that there would be good content on that. It's all that the market currently does until now.
Right.
Until now. Now we have a bridge of true utility, true cloud value that backs and is created to leverage that power of blockchain. And BlockCerts Blockchain, the fundamental underlying component of BlockCerts Blockchain, is built on Ethereum, re-engineered or versioned, as in that utility curve, to handle actual transactions in business without burning or just losing the cost, but actually running it like an actual business model needs to run or transaction model needs to run.
True. And Tim, and also without spending high gas fees. And I think that's the brilliance in this too.
Gas fees, that's what I'm trying to say is if anybody could imagine this, and here's a way to think about ink, the way we engineered ink versus gas fees. Imagine that you went to the store with your credit card, you put it in the machine, and the transaction didn't go through. You took it out. I actually did this the other day. I went to the grocery. I tried to use my device to scan. It didn't work. So I had to leave my groceries there, run up 5 minutes to my house, get my wallet, and come back with my actual plastic card.
Yep.
Okay. So I burned some gas to do that. And my groceries were sitting there. The transactions failed. Right. Yep. Now, what if I had to pay for it anyway? Hey, that's your problem. That's your mistake. Yep. You paid twice. Now I had to start over, but I had to pay twice for those groceries. And that's the way the market works right now.
Yeah. And how about if it was $300 for that first transaction?
Exactly. $300 for the transaction. My $300 grocery shop cost $600.
Right.
Now, what about this? Let's take it one step further. It was $300 for my groceries, but by the time I left and came back, it was $3,400 plus I lost the $300. That's the way it functionally works right now in the Ethereum market.
Right. And there are very bright people, pros out there that have algorithms that can peg something that most of us don't have. So that's, something to be aware of too.
We'll talk a little bit next week when we answer questions about high frequency trading and the problems that created. We'll talk about dark pools and what the institutional investors did. We'll talk about arbitrage. We can talk about forward contracts, the way the commodities market has run forever on forward contracts to eliminate that kind of speculation.
Right.
An entire market emerged around things like soybeans and grains and pork bellies. Go watch the movie Trading Places.
Trading Places.
Completely to hand that speculation off to speculators while there was still a logical way to get goods from before they were harvested in the ground to market without the farmers taking the risk. If the farmers had taken all the risk, you wouldn't have farmers.
Yeah.
Right? So all those kinds of things are embedded in what's happening in this world today. And by combining that value into utility, you really do have a new economic technology and utility curve that's emerged.
Perfect. Hopefully everyone gets this. This is a big point, and it's something that is really changing the market, as you talked about with Brave, with BlockCerts, and with others that will follow.
That's right. So the more we can get these technologies that actually do embed this Web 3.0 model in, Web 3.0 isn't just about tech. It's about a new level of thinking, how business needs to work and economics need to work in building utility value and protecting things like privacy, environmental, scalability, social responsibility, and obviously compliance or governance, or as we talked about a few weeks ago, ESG.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a long conversation with my daughter last night about that because Gen X, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. So we'll keep going with the world from here. If you like this, please thumbs up. If you didn't like it, sorry, we're trying and we keep trying week after week to make that. Please subscribe and join our community, join the movement. Think long term. It really is the way to go.
It is.
So
Thank
with
you.
that, stay safe, stay digital, stay healthy. Dan?
Yep. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
Have a great